Hey guys, Brian here with Better Chess Training, and in today's video, I'd like to share a game I played recently on stream. And this game I thought I played fairly well, so I wanted to explain the logic behind it, and hopefully it will be instructive from that point of view. I was playing black here, and my opponent's rated around the same level, about 2100 Lichess Classical. And he started out with f4, the bird's opening. I responded with d5, knight to f3, knight to f6, and d4 here, looking to go into a stone wall. e6 is my normal move against this. And here he played an odd move, bishop to e3, which has actually been played quite a bit on Lichess, but I could not find any recent master games in the Lichess database here. And it makes sense that you wouldn't really find this played among masters. He's blocking this pawn, and we'll see in a second what his idea is, but it's kind of blocking up his development. So I couldn't really. There's no immediate way to punish it. Normally, we'd like to play c5, but the one upside of bishop to e3 is that that's not possible at the moment. So I play bishop to e7, looking to develop my king side and get my king to safety. My opponent plays bishop to f2, and I castle. So far, so good. Okay, he plays another move here, a4. I'm not exactly sure what the idea is behind this, but one thought I had was that maybe, just maybe, my opponent might be thinking if I play something like b6 of continuing on here. The problem here is that even at this stage, I can maybe just play something like c5 now. And his idea, of course, is that if I can't take here with the pawn because it is pinned, but I can just take back here with the queen. And if he trades here, then I don't have to take here with the bishop, although that's fine as well. I can actually take here on b2, which this now starts to become a little bit dangerous for my opponent. But instead, I decided just to stop it in its tracks. And my idea here is my usual idea in the stonewall after e3 is to play b6 and then trade off my bad bishop because these pawns are in the center on the light squares with his good bishop, which is not encumbered as much. So he plays bishop to d3. I play bishop to a6, and then he plays c3. Now here, pretty much I have to take if I want to trade off bishops because otherwise he can just drop back to c2. So I take, he takes back with the queen, and now I finally get c5 in. Questionable whether this was the best move or not. I could have actually played knight to e4 here, and then c5, but this might, puts pressure here on this bishop. And then after he castles, I can develop first. c5 right away maybe wasn't the best way to do it, but it's definitely not a bad move, and it continues to, put pressure. The only thing I didn't like about this move, or the thing that I thought, was that if he plays knight to e5, again, it's not horrible here, but the problem is that I have to be careful with these squares. And the plan I had come up with during the game was to play something like queen to c7 and then bishop to d6 to counter it. So the first, or I guess you want to make sure that when you're facing an opening that you haven't played before, that you are looking for his ideas, looking for your opponent's ideas so that you can make sure that you can meet them. Now here my opponent plays another, I would say, odd move, which is h4 here. And so not quite sure what his idea is. I mean, his play is it's really going to take a long time to develop. So it allows me to continue my development. Now I can get knight b to d7 in, covering this e5 square. Here my opponent plays knight to g5. And the idea behind that is if I play h6, and then he plays, say, knight b to d2, and then I take, the problem he has here is that now he is hitting my my knight. Of course, this is not the fear is that if he had if I played something like this, of course he's going to checkmate me. Um, and if I played something like this, he takes with the knight, I take back, and then he wins a pawn. Uh, and even though he sacrificed a piece, I'm in a little bit of trouble here. It can block the. I am a piece up, but let's say I block the checkmate. After he castles, he's got a nice initiative here. If he opens the D file, my knight is pinned, and these squares around my king are getting a little dangerous, a little cramped. But of course, I did not fall for that. Actually, h6 in this position. Let me go back here. H6 in this position is actually fine. Let's say he plays knight to d2. Again, I don't have to take. If I did take, it's about even because he will get quite a bit of an initiative here. But I don't have to play that. I can slowly develop with moves like queen to c7. And if he maintains this knight here, and let's say he castles, then here there's a lot of good moves. I can play c4, for example. So I don't have to take it right away, but it is very dangerous for him. And checking this with the engine is totally winning for black. But not calculating all of the complexities here, I decided to take on d4. This wasn't the best move. If he actually takes back with the e-pawn, black still has an advantage, but not as much as we have in a game because the c-file stays closed. And we'll see in a game that this becomes quite annoying. But this is advantageous for black because of white's awkward development. Like this bishop isn't very good. This knight isn't developed, for example. Okay, let's go back. He takes with the c-pawn instead. And this allows me to develop naturally. Of course, I could hit him with this check, which would have been good as well. But I played a decent move too, rook to c8, taking over the c-file. And we can see now in these types of openings where the center is pretty closed here, as you can see with all the solid structure here, being able to get these open lines is going to be very important in this game. Now here, white is still playing for this opening of the h-file, but I think he should have just castled, and we'll see in a little bit that he gets into a little bit of trouble here. Okay, he plays knight to d2, and here I play queen to c7. And you'll see my idea. Basically, he cannot play this. He cannot contest here. And now it's a little late. If he tries to castle here, then queen to c2 just gives me a huge advantage. He takes, and I take. And then let's say he tries to challenge. Well, first of all, I'm hitting his knight, so he needs to defend that first. Let's say he brings that here to f3. But then here, now I have total control over the c1 square. My rook is here on the 7th rank, and I have total control of the c-file. There's no way that he can contest that at the moment. And now, without all of these mating threats, h5 is going to come, and this knight's going to be forced back to an awkward square. So my opponent plays knight to f3. And here I continue on as before with queen to c2. Now notice this is a very important move here. It seems like I'm just trading off the queens, but the important part here is that I am taking control of the c2 square with my rook, and that's going to be important throughout this game. Okay, he takes, and I take back, and you can see now I just have this pressure coming down here. And here, he defends the b-pawn, but probably he might have wanted to castle. I made a slight mistake here, and what I should have done was played bishop to b4 check, because now my opponent won't be able to castle. He plays king to f1, and this h rook is locked out pretty much for the rest of the game. Instead, I just doubled up, which I think is fine as well, but unfortunately it did give white a chance to castle. But now that he's castled, we can kind of take a look at the situation. Now, notice that material is even, but it's the quality of the pieces and the control that is the difference in this game. We can see that we can see that I have total control of the C file, control of this rank here, and these squares here are going to be very nice for my knight. So let's see what happens. Knight to g4. Of course, the idea here is that I'm threatening here. He can't move this bishop because the e3 pawn would then be hanging. He plays knight to d5, and here it's important to just trade off a couple knights. Of course, he's attacking here, but also threatening to take my strong knight here on g4. So I capture. He takes back, and here now I play h6, kicking back this knight. The knight retreats, and the reason I chose to do so now is because now he can't. If he moves this bishop out of the way, there might be some semblance of pressure here on f7. So I decided to kick it back. He goes to f3. Of course, if he goes to h3, then I could, I'm not sure if I would do this, but I could take. And then after he takes back, I can capture again. Actually, I could leave it here because my rook I could just capture here with the bishop, winning the h4 pawn. But he goes to f3. And here, I play bishop to b4, just controlling these squares, controlling the e1 square, which we'll see is important later. Other moves I could have played here, I could have played something like, let's see here, rook to e2, already starting to put pressure here. But then I was worried about, well, I guess I didn't have to worry, but I was worried about moves like this, protecting. But then I could just grab the pawn on b2. So you can see, even not playing the best moves, I have total control of this position. And so that's what, I guess, the lesson I'm trying to impart here is that you want to try to improve the quality of your pieces while diminishing the quality of your opponent's pieces. And even if material is even, as we have in this game, the black pieces just has a huge advantage here. Okay, bishop to b4. Okay, b3 is played. And now I play rook to e2, going after this pawn. Here my opponent played a very good move, although again it's not enough. He plays knight to h2, because if I get a chance, let's say he plays something else, like, I can't even think of what he could play. Let's just say he plays h5, just as an example. Well, now it gets very dangerous because I just bring my other rook here, and I'm going to win some material probably. Let's see. Let's go back. So he plays knight to h2. And I even considered whether or not... So here I can win a pawn, as I do in the game. But I considered whether or not it was just important enough to keep the... get the two rooks on the 7th rank. And I actually think it would have been okay. So, for example, I could have played knight to takes h2. And after king takes h2, now play here. His king would be forced to go back. And in this position, again, it is just totally winning for, it's just totally winning for black. But I guess I felt that I wanted to cash in on winning some material here. So I went ahead, I played knight takes e3. And after bishop takes e3, rook takes e3, then he played knight to f3. So here, a couple ideas I had. One was to actually just go after this pawn here. And then it gets kind of interesting. He could try to defend it like this, but this is problematic because then I play rook to c2. And remember before I talked about having the rooks on the 7th rank. If he goes back here, now I just drop back here and going after this. Very difficult to defend. He's going to be losing some material. So, but instead I played rook to e2 with similar ideas. But now he's able to attack me. Rook to c1, contesting the file. And I considered a few things here. I can win a pawn here with rook takes c1 check. Rook takes c1. and then rook to b2. But I didn't like the complications after rook to c8 check, king to h7, and for example, either rook to c7 or something like rook to b5 here. Even though it's winning as well, I think. But I think what I played in the game was safer and allowed less counterplay for my opponent. Okay, so my opponent trades rooks. But again, you can see this rook here is just very powerful. King to h2. Here I played f6, both to just so I can activate my king as well as just disrupt any remaining board, positional control here. I also saw what happened in the game here, which is this idea. After king to g3, I can take. Now, if he takes with the pawn, I just have this nice passed pawn. And in the game, he took with the knight, and then here I could just pin it. So I'm just going to be winning material. So king to g4. By the way, let me just take a look here. If I go here, I can actually take my time and maybe play something like rook to e2, for example, in order to get a similar effect to what I had in the game. But he went to g4 to get out of the pin, and I take. So here, it's sort of a transformation of advantages. So in the earlier part of the game, I had this control over the 7th rank and the c-file, but I traded it in for a little bit of material by winning the e3 pawn. And here, I think my bishop was a little better than his knight, but I trade that in to get a passed pawn. And so it's something that I've noticed in games of the Masters, is that ability to assess. Here, there's just concrete. I'm just winning material, several pawns here. So here it is totally winning, so I'm just going to kind of show you what happened. I just want to keep control of the c-file here. He tries to advance, and then here I hit him with a check, and then I just go over to the a-file to win the a4 pawn. So he goes here, and check. Hits me one more time with a check. Could get slightly tricky here. I was looking at h5, but the problem is he doesn't really have anything. There's no like mating threats. If he checks me again, then I'm just going to hide my king here. Let's say he checks me again, and I could just tuck my king away and then win these 2 pawns, and that'll be fine. So in these totally winning positions, I don't want to overanalyze, but just show you, just have a general plan on how you're actually going to win the position. King to g6, h5 check, and so we trade pawns, but I just have too many. And you can see here that it's pretty simple. I just make sure that all of my pawns are protected and pretty much just set up here. And you can see here that I have a nice little pattern to promote. So that was my game. I really enjoyed playing it, and I hope you enjoyed this this game review, and I hope you found it helpful and instructive. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button. If you are not already a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button down below, and that way you can stay informed when I put out new videos. I also stream on Tuesday and Thursday nights, Eastern time, as well as Saturday mornings. So I'm starting to put my streaming schedule in the community tab, so check those out. And also, you can also check out my Twitter. My Twitter handle is down below in the description. Over here, I've got another video I think you might like. So check that out, and I hope you have a great day.